doctor's degree. You don't feel old until you start thinking about these inductees. 54 years ago, I came to Olive Branch High School, and Mr. Chain interviewed me. That was 1962, 54 years, is that right? I was a math teacher, but it's 54 years. And Mr. Chain needed a math teacher. And he saw that I had a degree in chemistry and mathematics. Well, I had interviewed as a chemist at Grace Chemical Company, and they carried me in and asked me a whole bunch of questions about organic ketones and things like that. I hated organic chemistry. He carried me back to the lab, a little cubby hole back there, and while he was talking to me, I said, I'm not going to spend the rest of my life in a cubby hole. So I came to Olive Branch and met Mr. Chain. Well, you know that was an experience that day.
Amen.
Mr. Chain needed a math teacher, so when he saw that I had a degree in mathematics, that was the end of the conversation about teaching. He was kind of proud of his son, Buddy, and so we went directly from his office to the football field because Buddy had started coaching at Olive Branch. That's all we talked about, was football and Buddy and Carolyn and all these. We didn't ever talk about algebraic equations or anything like that. I actually was going to take Mr. Carter's position, and I think Buddy had taken his position as a coach. But anyway, he said, Wendell, you're qualified. Of course, he had to have anybody that was certified. And Mr. Chain says, I'll make a deal with you. Again, supporting Buddy. Mr. Chain said, Wendell, if you'll go scouting with me every Friday night, you got the job. I got the job, and I went every Friday night. Can you imagine a 21-year-old just out of college spending, all night with this guy that had a reputation of slamming students up against the wall? I was kind of scared, but I was poor, and I just bought my first car, and I didn't have time to go back to Memphis, so he says, well, come on, Ruby will fix us something to eat. And Ruby did. And Ruby's a little bit like Mr. Allen and some of the rest, Mr. Chain. It was school, and I got a lot of instruction. So from about 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock every Friday night, when she'd warm up some steak for us, Miss Chain would give me instruction. Now, Wendell, you're 21 years old, da, 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 da. So Ruby meant a lot to me as well. You can see all of this is around Olive Branch High School, isn't it? And first PTA meeting, I met our first recipient, Mr. Bill Allen. Now, Mr. Bill Allen was known to give instructions as well. The first PTA meeting, his lovely daughter was I taught, and he corrected me some things about teaching. Right there the first night, and this was not a large area, the cafeteria. How many remember the cafeteria in the old high school? It seated maybe 60, 70. It was so small that we actually had to, on days we had fried chicken, we'd start right after breakfast and serve and hold up the buses in order to get everybody fed. It was that small. Everybody thinks they've had it rough. Now, we didn't walk uphill in the snow both ways, but that was pretty rough, wasn't it? Now, Mr. Allen went on to work with the Southern County Schools. I was fortunate enough, he did a great job with construction, and to the very end, he was still giving me instructions. His claim to fame was that Marthola and Sharon were good friends. And of course, Bill Allen, he and Marthola just decided that, Wendell, you're 21 years old. You need to be looking around town here for certain Olive Branch people. Well, there's a girl that worked in a bank, and to this day, Bill Allen tells everybody that he's the one that hooked Sharon and me up. Now, Janice Houston has a different story, but to this day, Sharon still hates him for that. But these are all really true friends. Jimmy Neal Andrews, I met him 54 years ago. And basically every Friday night, he told me how all the coaches were messing up, that he knew exactly what plays that they needed to be run. Just because he was a baseball coach, he knew everything about football too. But again, a wonderful relationship with Jimmy Neal. Who's next? Coach Carter. Now, Coach Carter gave me different instructions. It wasn't a suggestion like Ruby Chain. It was, do that. You know exactly what I'm talking about, Corky and Barbie. By the way, I was in school with both of those too. The only difference in all these people I was in school with is that they were back in the classroom and I was at the front, and the only difference is that I had the answer book on. That was the only difference. They knew more than I did, but it was a great, great fun time in 1962. Now, have I left off anybody? Well, Wendell Davis. Let me tell you about Wendell Davis. I started teaching in 1962, and I wasn't a very good teacher. Let me digress just a second, though, because Mr. Rackard and I work on OBTV every day. Tune in between 6:15 and 8:15 every day, and this guy will give you the weather on obtvlive.com. Tune in the morning on your smartphone, okay? And then call me.
I got that plug, you think?
Yeah. I should have worn the t-shirt, shouldn't I? But Mr. Chain, one summer, raise your hand if I've told him this part. You know, I reached that point, you know, to forget. But he called me in and said, Wendell, this new TV camera, I want you to get it, get Lemoyne and the coaches and do a show. So the first show for OBTV was done in preparation for a faculty meeting in August of 1962. And it was takeoff of the Johnny Carson show. Now, what's interesting and relevant was that here we had 3 coaches, Lemoyne and 2 other coaches, and they were up there, and guess what they were doing in 1962? Every one of them had a cigarette and talking. I'm just telling you that because I'm telling you times have changed. I'm different than I was in 1960. Well, not really. But Lemoyne up there, there were just no scripts. There were no teleprompters. And he's just up there and he says, he'd talk with the coaches and what have you been doing this summer? And they'd say, I've been measuring cotton fields. Coaches did that sort of thing back then. And then he ran out of things to do. And he says, now we've got this entertainer, Wendell Davis. Well, I didn't know what to do, but I got up and pretended like I was singing Don Ho's Tiny Boat. Now, believe it or not, that was 1966, I think it was, something like that. But I still have that video transferred from that to that to that. So, Jimmy, I know that you and Brian and Sam worked on all the football games, but you got to give Mr. Chain credit for the whole thing. Y'all, this is such an honor. I'm not deserving, but it's a thrill to be with these people. Thank you.